Hello, everyone. This is Krishanu, and welcome to the Weekends with Amit. I hope you all had a great week and even a better weekend. And we have something more which can make the last day of your week even a little better. Well, today's topic is quantum yoga. There are hardly any people who have not heard about yoga. I will at least assume in our audience that would be the case. But why quantum yoga? What is additionally there that qualifies a whole subject in this particular name? And how can this help us in a way which is maybe better than the traditional yoga? We will have all these questions answered during this session. And our guests today are, as usual, Dr. Amit Goswami and Dr. Valentina Onisor. A very warm welcome to both of you. And today's subject is quantum yoga. And as I can see, Dr. Goswami is the biggest authority on consciousness studies, and Dr. Valentina Onisor is a medical doctor, is just one of the things that she does. She's like an onion. You peel one layer, another layer comes out. So if we peel off the typical doctor layer, there is this beautiful other layers available. One of them is a mastery in yoga. So we have this deadly combination here, and we will go one by one. But first, the question to Dr. Goswami, if the audience asks, why is the need for a quantum yoga? How would you respond?
Good question. So let's see. First of all, yoga. People have very distorted notion sometimes what yoga is about. The confusion is that any words, any language usually means several things. And this is a problem. In the case of yoga, it means at least two things, many things to many people perhaps, but at least two things. One of the thing is yoga means union. So in that sense, since we have two selves, quantum physics as well as experimental data, as well as mystics through the ages, through experiences, and we can experience it today. Uh, there is another self behind the ego, beyond the ego, that personal psychologists also have discovered it. You can discover it. It's not difficult. It's a self we experience in present-centered uh, situations of experience, like creativity or intuition, that kind of thing. So these two selves, right? And yoga, to some people, means union. When the ego is given up, or popularly speaking, kill the ego. When you are able to kill the ego, then you merge with the quantum self. That's your real self. And of course, as an idea, it sounds like a wonderful idea. And when people do that, we call them enlightened. So that's one meaning of yoga. Yoga is a way to get enlightened. You merge with the quantum self, which is another way of saying that you unite with God. In Christianity, that concept is after death. So, in that sense, notice what Krishna said, it's a deadly combination. Yes, yoga can be a deadly combination because when you do yoga in that sense of union, then ego dies and you merge with the quantum self or eventually God. Quantum self is just a doorway to oneness, which we call God. All right. However, then what's the use of the world? Why was the world? If you have been attending this podcast, then you know already our answer. Our answer is that world is important. That's what science is about. When we did not have the science, it's understandable that people sought escape. They thought that the world is meaningless. But today we have a science to understand why the world exists. We have the purpose of the world, we have purpose of human life, all that laid out. Just attend our show regularly and you will get it. So for this particular episode, please assume that yes, quantum science has proven And our experience also proves the same thing day to day. World is important to most of us. A few people still hold on to that idea world is not important and they are ready to escape. So if the world is important, then what is yoga? So yoga, turns out, has also another meaning. Often yoga is used as a word for addition. And a little bit more elaboration denotes that addition means integration. Why integration? Why is that word much more significant than the word addition? The reason is integration, that word is used in psychological terms when we have opposites that are creating conflict. This is a very major characteristic for human beings. We often interpret the archetypes, values that come to us in terms of conflicting opposites, like good example is goodness being interpreted as good as well as evil. And usually because people don't understand the nature of the archetypes, but fall prey to the duality with which mind wants to experience it. And therefore, they end up choosing evil, choosing good, both of them, and cannot even distinguish what is good, what is evil. Not in today's culture. Today's culture, everything is mixed up. So it's very important to understand the significance of the second meaning, is to integrate the opposites into a transcendent whole. Goodness transcends them both. Goodness appears when you learn to use the concepts of duality as appropriate. Yes, some situations are evil. Murdering is evil. And yes, some situations are good, period. Loving is good. But other situation will be ambiguous, and yoga lets you see that in a transcendent way. What is the meaning in this particular case? Is this good or is this bad? This knowledge is not a routine knowledge that you can get by learning about goodness from other people. So how do you do it today? Today, if you know yourself and the society, people just learn things as concepts. They never actually try to experience them. And so this part of yoga, this meaning of yoga, is about experiencing opposites and seeing how how to find the appropriate response by integrating these things. Now, these are not only dichotomies that we experience, we also have male-female dichotomy. And that gives people wrong impression too. The way I process things, that's the male way. I suppress emotions, so I think emotions are bad, and women are to be discarded. They're emotional, right? Many men respond like this, and look at what that has created. We're ignoring 50% of the world's talent simply because the other 50% thinks that the other half is emotional, too emotional to make leadership or any other good decision. Do females think of men any better? No, no either. Because men are good at thinking and females disregard thinking. Many females, not all, just as not all male disregard the female because they're too emotional, but many females disregard the male because they talk too much. They are not picking from the heart. They don't know what they're talking about. It's superficial. Most men are that way, but not all. Again, they miss the boat. So, yoga, integration. Integrate all the dichotomies. It's still very difficult. The olden ways, like if you read Bhagavad Gita, an excellent treatise even today about all the different yogas that were discovered in India. In India, thousands of years ago. So India is the leader of yoga, no question about it. The reason that a Sanskrit word has entered vocabulary in every language today. Indians know about yoga, or should know about yoga. Indians probably are some of the most ignorant people about yoga today. Indian intelligentsia don't care about yoga. Indian women don't care about yoga. Mostly. Again, superlatives are wrong, but mostly, on the average. Westerners are more aware of yoga, those 15% that want to change. And they do it. But they also do it wrongly because the traditions about yoga has been anti this what I'm talking about, integration. They don't help integration. For example, you go to one of these yoga shows on your computer, I guarantee you, most of them will teach yoga in a way that will seem more like a stretching exercise. And they will emphasize that. They'll put some music, quick music with it. It's wonderful to participate, move your arms and stretching, but you could do any other exercise and to be like that. So people often wonder, okay, so what's special? Some of them are brainwashed, of course, that I'm doing yoga, so I'll get all the benefit. No, you won't get anything except stretching. It's not a physical thing, that's the emphasis. So what has happened today is that great amount of ignorance has taken over the entire field, and quantum science is telling us what those things that we are missing. So what is quantum yoga? Quantum yoga is getting the essence of yoga, getting the meaning of yoga, usefulness of yoga, using quantum principles directly. These are the principles. First of all, what is yoga for? Integration. There is one element that is true in the meaning of yoga as union, which is that we can integrate only with the help of the quantum self. Where they go wrong is that they set the objective too high. Kill the ego. No. In the way of integration, ego is important, but ego has to be corrected in its ways. Ego usually has a lot of ignorance. Some of the ignorance has to be peeled away. When it is peeled away, then ego becomes consonant with the ways of the quantum self. When the two cooperates, then we can do yoga. So the first yoga we have to do, we have to make the yoga and quantum self in synchrony, in harmony. Of course, quantum self is quantum self. That's the unchanging oneness, conduit to oneness. So we are not talking about changing that. So we are talking about changing. Ego has certain layers and layers of ignorance, changing those ignorant portions of the ego so that the ego become in synchrony to the quantum self. Quantum physics gives us these principles. One principle is non-locality, signalless communication. We practice with company with others. This is where old tradition uses yoga of love, for example, bhakti yoga in Sanskrit, yoga of devotion, love. And it teaches us love of God generally in the spiritual traditions because they have an aversion to sexuality. In quantum physics, it says love in any form. You want to love your wife and do it? Absolutely. Love your friend and do it? Absolutely. Any expression of love will take you to non-locality. Heart has very quick entry to non-locality, and that's what yoga accomplishes. That's one. And second one, of course, is quantum leaps, discontinuity. And a third one that we'll mention today, and we'll go into it later on if time permits. This is called tangled hierarchy. This is a very special yoga of relationship in a way that it makes the non-locality as more or less a way of your living or keeping expanded consciousness. That's another way of saying I'm including you, I'm being non-local with you. But this condition doesn't lack because every time we think, we have an experience, the non-locality breaks up, the connection breaks up. Tangle hierarchy relationship is a way of maintaining that relationship, even though I'm doing, experiencing other things. How does that happen? That requires some understanding. How to do yoga about it? That requires even more understanding. But first, try to understand the very basics of it. Yogis, from the quantum point of view, would say some things that doesn't always jive. For example, I'll make one statement right away that will not jive with you. Like me, the necessity of the technology is forcing me to use a chair. I'm sitting on a chair. Yoga says this is not the best way of connecting to non locality or quantum self. This posture is bad. Now you say, well, okay, what can posture do? Posture, how can posture help us into something about a quantum means of doing yoga? Now, for that, we have this yogi. Only yogis properly can explain it. How do you know that Valentina is in yogi? You will see that as soon as you see Valentina, for specially at my request, she has put on a bindi. She's such a good yogi that often her brow chakra, that's in between the two eyebrows, this part gets warm. And so yogis traditionally, and you will notice this also is true of bhakti. You have probably have seen a Hare Krishna person, they always wear sandalwood powder. That's another way of covering this spot because the spot gets warm. And to avoid that, if one covers with something soothing, like a woman wears bindi, it has become a decorative thing because people are ignorant today of these things, the spiritual significance of these things. But of course, knowledgeable people know that. So that's how you know that there's a yogi who will be talking to you about the usefulness of posture in pursuing the quantum means of doing yoga. Valentina, please.
So again, we speak about yoga of integration, right? And just to emphasize, because I come from about 30 years of practice in various systems, especially around yoga. But the whole idea in quantum yoga is the shift from the traditional practice of too much emphasis on the self archetype and getting out of the world, right? And ego also, and instead focus on any archetype, preferably on the Dharma, the personal Dharma, and of course engage in the creativity, take quantum leaps, and gradually make this shift of character, without which we cannot call a person transformed. So a person can have all kinds of states and awakenings of the various levels of chakras, but if this shift of character, towards building this character and what we call the soul, still that's not much of transformation. And eventually we concentrate on the archetype of wholeness, which consists of integrating all the dichotomies, both universal and archetypal. And Amit mentioned the exercises, they are called asanas in yoga. And they are meant to really balance the creativity and conditioning. So when we also talk about chakras, we speak about these things, and also balance the masculine and the feminine, outer, inner balancing is balance between sensory and extrasensory. And in this way, what happens is that we develop a strong, healthy, authentic ego, which is to be encouraged, not a strong egotistic ego, it's not that. So, and the negative emotions also will not go away, but this ego never uses all these negative emotions, for example, for his own benefit, right? So it's not using manipulation. If you see people using manipulation, that's not yoga. And then we speak about transformation in stages. That's also something very special that we came with in our program. And we still keep the reward system because the brain is reacting with this kind of rewards or punishment systems. But by increasing the happiness, we also satisfy the reward brain circuits. And if you were with us for a while now, you know what we mean by happiness and the states of expansion of consciousness which come together. And the fact is that the world needs such transformed people. And now about again, about yoga of integration, which is done in the quantum style. It's a gradual step-by-step process of progressively proceeding towards the eventual reunion with oneness, right? And that specific state of transcendence, which comes at that level. Okay, and the overall experiential goal of quantum yoga is the ability to live and act from expanded, inclusive states of consciousness. And first we learn what is preventing us and the human condition, all this universal software and limitation, blockages, so we become aware of what's happening there. And then we work at various levels. And we, of course, we have all this infinite potentiality which is available for us to explore and make our situation better from wherever we are, okay? Because we have indeed this built-in ability to explore our potentiality, but we need to learn about this, right? And there are, of course, good news and bad news together, so all that we are, you know. And first of all, we have to realize the sources of the contraction of consciousness, and also speaking about asanas and poses. If you are very rigid, then you should know that there is a contraction there, not just in the physical level, of course, yeah. As when we have diseases, it's not happening at once, you know. So the more we will be able to practice yoga from the real quantum yoga perspective, you will see that you will become also more flexible. But the idea is not to promote only these people which are very much like into sport and extremely flexible. It's not about that either. Okay, so because there can be people which are not that flexible and they can do the asanas, which they don't have to be done in the perfect way, as you see in the pictures, you know, but rather with the right focus. And now let me just tell you about the asanas, finally. So taking a certain body attitude, again, the name is asana in yoga, it's inducing immediately a certain psychomental attitude, which corresponds precisely to that body position. Even if you stand, for example, with the back straight, you know, you will have a certain position. If you want to speak, for example, and have a certain charisma in front of a group of people, you better stand. The energy will be different, okay? And another example is simply if you walk like that, you know, for a while because you're upset for some reason, after 5 minutes you will get depressed. So this is the most simple example. So when also we have a certain inner attitude, also it can be noticed by the attitude or the position of our body, as I said, okay? So again, a very happy person and positive will not be like that, truly, okay? So performing an exceptional state of mental focus will have certain physiological effects, and which are easily perceivable with even with the lab equipment, if you want. And our research has indeed discovered enormous potentiality in the traditional hatha yoga practices, now that we have a science of vital energy and feeling. So even simple physical exercises, to start again from zero, they can be done while paying attention to the vital energy movements as we move different parts of the body. Even if we are taking the help of a kind of device for the beginning, let's say. But the change in the physical body initiated by the exercise also will initiate changes in the vital software for maintaining the correlation with the physical. So in the same way, hatha yoga, if done in a hurry and without awareness of vital movements, what you see nowadays, which is called yoga, which actually it's a sport, right? Stretching maximum. So it's only becoming a physical exercise in its effectiveness in keeping the vital dynamic, which again is not a bad thing, but that's not yoga. So in other words, again, hatha yoga should be done slowly and always paying attention to the vital movements. And then do be, as you know about the do style, implicitly enters in the process. So the vital potentialities initiated by the exercise have a chance to expand, and more dynamism will result. You know? And for example, just as animals do, if you practice holding the posture for a while, for the resonance with archetypes to take effect, you know, so that would be the best if you know about these things. And even more in slow moving yoga or yoga in a holding position, you can evoke cosmic prana or earth prana, which is vital energy non-locally available from extraterrestrial and Earth biota, respectively, which will aid the creative process. And if the position is an animal position, if you know the words in Sanskrit, the resonances that you will be able will be very special, and you can use them. You can use this non-local memory together with your effort to keep the vital software dynamic, which is a prerequisite of good health. So the first stage in what we call quantum yoga will be to just maintain simply the health, the minimum state of health. This will be the very first thing. And again, why these postures? Because every vital organ of the physical organs has a twofold yin-yang polarity. Okay, and we call it different than in Chinese medicine, what we say yin and yang. Yang is the current manifest vital energy movement, and yin is the potentiality. So the balance is necessary for enhancing the ability of quickly adjusting the vital to fit the physical functional requirement with minor changes, which can be, of course, seasonal changes. You see now what's happening with the weather, emotional changes, hormones. So these postures are chosen to maintain the yin-yang balance of all the important organs of the body, but this is just really the very first phase of what we want to do in quantum yoga. Okay, because again, just to give you a taste of it, so we speak about maintenance of the 5 bodies, the 5 bodies. We are not just a physical body, so I hope you know that. And this is a big one, to start with taking care of the mind, of course, first of all, and then the maintenance of the 5 bodies. And then the second stage will be about soul building related to the supramental. And then in the third one, which is later on, we speak about healing if something like goes wrong as we develop this soul or the supramental structure, right? And so there are rewards, really. The quantum science promises these rewards too, because yoga will optimize the way our system works. Our body, our vital experiences, the mind, the soul, and even our relationship to the spirit, all of them can be optimized by quantum yoga, right? So aside from optimizing our ability to partake pleasure, it's also about the ability, in addition, the ability of happiness, as you are able to expand your consciousness to include others and enjoy a special relationship there, which is having this tangle hierarchy that Amit mentioned. So the scope of how you use your reward, in itself, it's expanded. So again, it's a gradual step-by-step process of progressively proceeding towards this eventual reunion with one. It's the pragmatic way, if you want to call it. So it's integral yoga, perfected with the wisdom gained by using quantum science help in doing the integration. And but you need to be ready, of course. So we have to see it's for everybody, but you need to be ready. And of course, it's a lot more to say, but Krishano, I don't know how much time I have.
Well, we just have a few minutes left, but thank you anyway. So this is a very common conception among people, that yoga is just about some postures and that's it. And very clearly, this is not the right way to think. And both of you have contributed largely how it means, what it means, and how to go about practicing yoga. But today we really have very little time. Maybe depending on the response, we can have another show on the same subject next week. We'll see about that. But to wrap up today, back to Dr. Goswami.
Okay. That was very wonderful exposition of the whole quantum yoga. Thank you, Valentina. In case you have forgotten what the 5 bodies are, once again, physical, vital, mental, supramental or soul, and then, of course, spiritual. That's the oneness. The other thing that I promised is to explain to you exactly what we do when we practice tangle hierarchy. So this is one aspect of man-woman dichotomy. One aspect. There are other aspects too. But one aspect is that culturally, partly by inheritance of the software, males have their navel chakra awareness much more in their body. Females have their heart chakra awareness much more than males. This is the way we traditionally grow up, unless your parents are knowledgeable and they are growing up in the quantum way. This is the usual way. That produces a dichotomy. And you can identify symptoms of the dichotomy. Men will be defensive, their heart is not awakened. Females will be kind of needy because their navel is not awakened. That's what gives us self worth, that's what gives us courage. So, how to practice tangle hierarchy? Tangle hierarchy is bringing respect in the relationship. What happens to us is that if somebody lacks in a quality that we have, we automatically start disrespecting the other because, oh, look at her, she is so needy. We completely ignore the fact, yes, she is needy, but she can love you. And similarly, women have the tendency, oh, he just loves from his words, he doesn't mean it, he doesn't have any heart. Never mind that she depends on her or him for when support is needed. He is better giving the support. So suppose you use this deficiency in other, not for disrespect, but instead boosting up the other. You try to boost up the other. You try to boost up, if you're a male, her navel. How? You give her those stuff that you value. For example, there's a practice that I did long time ago. It was so useful to me. Give the woman the privilege of being right. Many of our fights happen because we all have a tendency of wanting to be right all the time. It doesn't matter that we have a stupid notion, but we want to be right in the debate. Who is right? I am the right. Because we only see ourselves, we don't see the other as a subject. We see other as an object. This is what we are trying to change. So if one good practice is for a month, you don't have to do it forever. That would be impossible. But for a month at least, defer to the other. Let her be right. Now, this is only important practice for men. For women, on the other hand, what kind of practice do we want to do? The other is very verbal. So teach the other ways that the other can give up the verbal ways and learn non-verbal ways to communicate, which is through feelings. So when he is too talkative, don't discourage. No, I don't want to talk. Instead of doing that, get close and hug the person. That's a very wonderful way of diffusing this so much of intellectual talkativeness, or even worse, informational talkativeness, that tendency that men have. So this is an example of establishing a tangled hierarchy between the two people, because I'm boosting up at your weakness, and if the weakness doesn't exist, of course, you will be filled and I will be fulfilled, and therefore the relationship will automatically get better, right? Okay.
All right. Great. So this is something very, very interesting. And we encourage our viewers to practice this for a week, not even a month. And let us know in info@amitgoswami.org. We would be delighted to know your responses. Or if you need to know more about what we do, please visit www.amitgoswami.org. Thank you, both of you. And this is something I believe our viewers will really, really love, particularly the last piece. It will bring peace to so many places. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week.